So the question is, what do we say with our bodies when we do physical things such as hold hands, kiss, or when we share sexual intimacy in marriage? You know, I can still remember when my wife and I were dating. I still remember the first time that we touched hands. I remember where we were. I remember which hand it was. I remember how our hands touched. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? That memory is seared into my brain that I can't forget it. I don't remember what we were speaking about. In fact, I don't remember any conversation from that entire period of my life, which annoys my wife a little bit. But I remember the moment that our hands touched affectionately for the first time. Wow. Powerful stuff. And so the question is, what was the body language of sex created by God to say? Well, the first thing is, it was created to say, I love you totally. All of me is giving all of myself to all of you, and you're giving all of yourself to me. It's not just part of my body. It's not just my right arm. It's my entire body. In fact, it's more than my body. It's my entire person. Secondly, I love you faithfully. The body language of sex is saying, I love you and only you, and I'm making a promise to be with you. A promise to be with you forever, which is pretty full on. And I'll explain that more in a moment. But in the moment of sex, we're saying with our body language, I'm ruling everybody else out. Everyone in the world, and I'm ruling you in. It's all about you. Thirdly, I love you unconditionally. This means freely. The way it's intended is we're holding nothing back. There's no strings attached. It's a free gift of myself. Obviously, we're talking about consensual sex where people give of themselves freely. And thirdly, I love you in a life-giving way. So during sex, particularly when we're talking about heterosexual sex, a person is loving that person with a part of their body that could create another person with them. Wow. There's something we can do as human beings that is so powerful, it can actually create a human being. We're co-creators. That's pretty cool. So the body language of sex is saying, I love you in a life-giving way. And so back to my story briefly. This is me, high school formal, about 17 in that photo, hadn't had sex, and I thought I was the only one. We know quite accurately a little bit less than half the people that leave high school in this country have had sex, but I thought it was like 99%, and I was the one dude who was missing out. That's how I felt. That's how a lot of people feel. And I still believed it was special. I'd grown up believing that sex was special, that marriage was important, but my standards had got, I suppose, lowered and less than that innocent year 8 boy, that's for sure. This is me at 21, and I think by this point, university, influence of my friends, effects of the media and peer pressure, I just didn't believe much of what I used to believe. I hadn't had sex, but I just couldn't understand why. I'd never heard a talk like this. No one had ever explained to me why sex might be valuable in a way that I would understand. And so, to cut a long story short, at this age, I remember leaving for a party, and I remember my housemate saying to me, Paul, if you can't pick up tonight, you can't pick up. In other words, if you can't get sex, there is something wrong with you. And I went to this party with this thought in my head, wondering why am I trying? Why am I trying to not have sex? To cut a long story short, I had sex that night for the first time with a girl who I'd never met before, a girl who I haven't seen since, a girl whose name I don't even recall. And it wasn't how I thought sex was going to be. It wasn't special. It wasn't how I now experience it in marriage. And I just remember driving home that night and thinking as I drove home about the feeling I was having. And if I had to describe it, it would be a feeling of numbness, a feeling of plainness, a feeling of emptiness. Not something super low, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't devastated, but nothing super high, just like a nothing, a bland feeling. And I went home that night and I remember going into the bathroom and looking at myself in the mirror and saying these words out loud. Well, you're a man now. Well, you're a man now. And I look back at that moment, and the reason I share it is that for me, it represents a real low point of my life, a low point of my understanding of what it means to be a man. I look back at this guy, and every time I share this, I feel sad. I feel sad for him. I want to go back to this dude, and I want to grab him. I want to shake him. I want to give him a cuddle and say, mate, it is all good. You are okay. You do not have to have sex to be a man. You do not have to have sex to be a man. I always make the joke, there used to be this dog in my street. It has sex all the time. All the time. And it doesn't make him a man. It doesn't make him a man. In fact, by having sex just because we want to, just because we feel like it, it makes us more akin to the animals than it does to being truly human. And yet, I believed it. I believed that message that I'd been sold so many times deep in my gut that I stood there and pronounced out loud that this has now made me a grown-up. I've finally made it. Commitment. And most people make similar vows. Certainly within the Christian tradition, they're very similar vows that people make. On my wedding day, I said, I, Paul, take you, Emma, to be my lawful wedded wife. I promise to love you and honour you all the days of my life, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, till death do us part. We go on as part of the wedding ceremony and the vows that we made, where we make a statement that basically says that I'll accept children lovingly from God. And what's interesting is when you analyse the vow and what happens on the wedding day is that it says 4 things. The first thing it says is, I love you totally. All of me, in front of all my friends and family, in front of God Almighty, is committing to you totally. No longer 2 lives. We're now coming together as one. I commit to you faithfully, till death do us part. That is pretty full on. That is countercultural. But that's what we say when we get married. I'm going to stay with you until death do us part. I love you unconditionally. Have you ever wondered why people say weird things like rich, poor, sick, healthy, good times and bad? It's because they're saying there's no conditions, no matter what. I'm going to commit to you totally, faithfully, and without conditions, which is really hard. I'm going to be true to someone till the day I die. That's full on. It doesn't always work out that way. My family has been broken marriages, I'm sure, in many of yours. But it doesn't change the intention of what marriage was created for or what people enter into when they do get married. And lastly, that I'll accept children lovingly from God. I love you in a life-giving way. So not only do I want to bring joy and pleasure and life to our relationship, but potentially our love may overflow into the creation of another human being. Wow, that's pretty cool. A life-giving love. And so, deep, important way, and this oxytocin is also released during sex. So it's one of the reasons why sex can never be casual. I hate that term, casual sex, because it's an oxymoron. It makes no sense. Our bodies speak of a different truth. Sex is meant to be meaningful. Sex is meant to be bonding, and it has a significant role in interactions between people. And so it's physical, but it's more than just physical. It's also emotional, psychological, and it's spiritual. Christians believe that 2 souls actually become one, a one flesh union, which is pretty full on. And so in marriage, sex is a really powerful bond. It affirms the wedding vows. The body language of sex communicates the same vow that was made on the wedding day. So rather than my body saying I love you in this full-on way and my actions and my words saying something different, when 2 people make love in marriage, their body language is saying I love you totally, faithfully, unconditionally, and in a life-giving way. And that's saying exactly the same thing as what they said on their wedding day in their vow, which is pretty cool. So it affirms and it repeats what they said when they got married. But more than that, it also renews and creates. Okay, so it's not just confirming it, but it's got a performative sort of action. So in some ways, the term making love makes a lot of sense. When people make love, they actually make love. Something new comes into existence with each sexual encounter. And in a practical way, it's creative because it potentially creates life. We talk about the two fundamental reasons why sex exists as being love and life, bonding and babies, the unitive and the procreative. And so when lived out the way it's meant to be, sex is pretty special. It's risk-free. Man, I don't worry about STIs in my relationship, sexually transmitted infections. I don't worry about emotional hurt or pain. There's no risks in my relationship, in the sex I experience. It adds to our life. It affirms the other. And it's affirming of the wedding vows. So it's renewing and creating that love every time we make love. Life. And I want to finish with an uplifting clip, which is a clip of my little girl Ruby when she was actually in the womb. I hope you enjoy it.
When the sonographer asked Paul to speak to the baby, and I think Paul said something simple like, "Hello baby, I love you baby." And just seeing the baby actually open its eyes and turn its head towards where Paul was speaking, it was like, I know this voice. And
I am so in love with you. Oh, I am so in love with you. Oh, I will give my life for you, 'cause I am so and I know that I will make mistakes, and I know that I am not the best at in the world, and I know that I will give my best to you, 'cause I know that I'm in love with you.
She looks just like in the ultrasound scan, the way she's trying to get her hand in her mouth, like identical. Just exactly the same.
I am so in love with you. Oh, I am so in love with you. Oh, I would fight the world for you, 'cause I am so in love with you, and I know that I will make mistakes.
bye-bye.
And I know
Bye-bye.
that I'm a simple man, and I know